Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 9 of Facing the Crowd.
Welcome back,
Um,
everyone.
so today, there's been some Twitter drama past couple of days. That's really fun. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. Um, and of course, last episode, if I recall, was about like the fractures seen in conservatism, and today we're gonna be talking about more of that, or going a little bit deeper into that, just because that happens to relate with what's been happening here. So let me pull this one up. So this is kind of wild.
Yeah, I
I
was
got this one
pretty
here.
shocked
So
when I saw this.
so this took conservative
This
internet by
was posted
storm.
on Valentine's Day
It's
too. That's just
posted on
crazy.
Valentine's Day. Um, So, I like I was on Twitter way too much today, just seeing everyone discuss this. My entire timeline today it's awful. But it's a little bit of an interesting situation, and we're gonna get into that. I have some other relevant posts regarding this specific issue that I think are good to go over. So, basically, gist of it, Ashley St. Clair is a conservative um, influencer, popular on Twitter. I think she has a lot of followers. Let me see that 1.1 million followers.
Mm.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
Um, and primarily, what she just says is just like her normal conservative talking points. Basically, all of her tweets. I've liked a lot of her tweets. I know that for sure. I never followed her for whatever reason. I feel like there was one of her tweets that was kind of bad a while back. I can't remember what it was, but um, anyway. So, but then she does this. So obviously, she has a child out of wedlock, which is controversial in of itself for a supposed conservative influencer. But
hmm
what makes the situation more worse or more interesting is that she had the child with Elon. This is, I think, Elon's like 13th kid with, is it like fourth or fifth woman? I don't know the specific
yeah,
numbers.
something. It's
They're
crazy.
too high, obviously.
Yeah,
So basically, Ashley seemingly, in my opinion, gets exposed as a grifter here, um, pretty clearly. Although you could also argue that um, she's just not a true conservative. She kind of picks and chooses the conservative ideas she likes and then
right.
stands by those. Difficult to say. However, if you go into the comments here on this announcement, you'll notice that almost all of these are positive. So first of all, you have Candace, who's a Christian, congratulating that. Now, here's the thing: is that the main issue here is that obviously, being pro-life, people are celebrating a child coming into the world. All children are made in the image of God. That's
Right.
fine, but a lot of these people are kind of leaving out the elephant in the room of it being outside of wedlock with Elon. They seem to be a little ignoring that, at least, and just kind of out of the gate. You also have James O'Keefe. Kaguya actually seemed to give her take on this. Um, Basically, just calling her out as a fake conservative, fake traditional. I believe there was a like a trad wife TikToker who got basically exposed of completely faking the lifestyle. I can't. I feel like that was fairly recent. Someone else. So of course that's what some people are taking. Lila is a major pro-life advocate on the internet. She's congratulating Ashley. Of course, that makes sense because of her pro-life position. Lives with TikTok cat turd even. Scott Pressler. Basically, a lot of these other conservative voices seem to be celebrating this without addressing some of the issues behind it, which, I mean, fair enough if you want to be positive.
Sure.
Sure, like you don't necessarily have to dig directly into all of the nitty gritty, the more questionable stuff right from the get go. And I feel like a lot of these other conservative influencers have probably addressed the issue elsewhere because I have a feeling that a lot of them recognize that that some people are calling it out, and they might as well.
Right.
But yeah, at least I feel like I've seen some of that. But yeah, so what do you got to say about it?
I hardly know what to make of this, honestly. This just seems entirely crazy to me, and I apologize if I end up talking a little bit less this episode. I am getting over a cold, so I may be a bit more silent than usual, but like, I understand, I guess, why people aren't trying to call her out or something on the post where she's like, hey, I had a baby or whatever. Like, when someone says, hey, I had a baby, you're not like, you're a bad person for having a baby. No, you're like, congratulations, you had a baby.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, this is just like a huge bombshell post, and there's a little bit more to this, certainly, than, yay, famous person had a baby. Like,
Right.
it's almost hard to believe this is real to me. And I'm sure it is because she's saying it and because Elon Musk confirmed it. But this is like tabloid level craziness.
Right. It's certainly wild, and of course, like this comes as like just kind of showcases that not everyone on the right necessarily holds themselves to biblical values. Obviously,
Yeah.
there is some grace that you're gonna have to put in there. All have fallen short of God's perfect standard, and we frequently do so. But the thing is that there's absolutely nothing wrong with calling other people out in their sin, especially if they are a believer. I'm not 100% certain of Ashley's religious stance from what I've seen. I mean, I'm assuming that she might be like a cultural Christian in name only. It's possible she is a devout Christian, which I think would make this even more concerning. But nonetheless, it is quite interesting. I'm trying to find another post here. I don't think I see it here. It might have gotten deleted. Anyways, but the thing is that you notice that like a lot of conservative icons, influencers, congratulating her without really addressing a lot of the other issues. But there absolutely are some issues with that. So I have this tweet here. I'll go pull up quick. So this one here from John Root, I think that this kind of shows the issue here. So obviously, I would say if I like had to say which one's worse, I would say the Dave Rubin one is way worse. I strongly
100%.
condemn allowing gay couples to adopt kids, or I guess even like via surrogacy. I think would be even worse possibly. So this is absolutely awful compared to this. But obviously, both of them have issues that are within them. And the thing about is that I think a lot of the Christians seem to struggle a little bit with this, condemning all sexual sin. It feels like sometimes they'll hyper focus like homosexuality is wrong, but then they themselves are fornicating, or like it's not something like that. So there's a kind of it's a challenging topic to kind of loop everything in, and a lot of times, like obviously condemning homosexuality is going to probably get you more rage bait, more power on the internet, than compared to saying something like you should save sex till marriage, just because of current day drama in the culture war. But anyways, so but the thing is, this is quite an issue, and obviously, not everyone in the conservative space has praised this. Some of them might be a little bit harsh with it, a little bit, but I think that it's perfectly fine to call out this stuff. So this comment here is kind of interesting. We talked about this briefly. So this is one of the issues with this particular scenario that I've seen on Twitter is people trying to they're trying to attack those that are asking questions or attacking Ashley's sexual sin and Elon's sexual sin. They've tried to conflate that into the abortion issue, when I think those are just two completely different debates that people need to be having. So, for example, here, obviously, I would have much rather her have done what she did and actually gave birth to the child than to have an abortion. I think that would be the general conservative position. But some people are saying like, oh yeah, wait a minute, isn't that's like kind of like the bare minimum there. There seems to be other problems. Why are we focusing on this?
Right.
Sorry, yeah. And this response it's interesting. So yeah, I think that the abortion thing, that is kind of like the bare minimum of conservative ethics to go with here. And there's obviously a lot more going on that needs to be discussed much further beyond that. I think that the abortion thing is very, very clearly black and white for conservatives, but everything else might
Hmm.
be a little bit more in the gray for a lot of people on the right. Of course, I think that it's pretty black and white um, going off of biblical standards, but of course, not there's still quite a bit of a spectrum of ethics on the right. So, um, yeah, got anything to add to that?
I guess about this whole topic in general, I think there's some of like the criticism and communication gets a little bit lost in translation here because I think we're actually dealing with this issue on three different levels, but people are treating it as if it's like a one level issue.
Right,
So,
right,
first of all, you have like the moral religious level of it. And on that level, we can say, well, it's a good thing that she did not abort the baby, but at the same time, it is wrong to have a child out of wedlock. And then you can kind of look at it on the political level through kind of the lens of the cracks in conservatism, how there are these divisions in conservatism. And I think that this actually shows a pretty serious crack because I think that if you asked me what is the absolute foundation of conservatism, what is it that we are conserving? The thing I would want to conserve more than anything else, aside from Christianity, because Christianity is great, but I think there is a little bit of a difference between politics and Christianity. But I would say we're conserving like the traditional family structure. And what we're seeing here is not people conserving the traditional family structure, which I think shows a big difference in kind of the different ideas people have about what it means to be conservative. And then finally, I think we're dealing with this issue on kind of a etiquette or politeness level where it's like, okay, we probably don't tell this woman that you don't have sex outside of marriage on a post where she's saying she had a baby. Like
right.
that just doesn't seem appropriate. And but then that leads to some people shutting down those who are actually trying to voice legitimate considerations from the political or religious side.
Right, right, right. And yeah, I definitely think that there is kind of that sort of niceness. Like, obviously, like typically, like even like there's examples of people that completely hate each other on the internet, and they'd still congratulate them on having a baby.
Right.
That you see, which is like, it's one of those kind of those things where it's generally frowned upon in society to um, direct hate towards an individual in that specific circumstance. So I think that's definitely what's going on in Ashley's original post with everyone
Mhm.
congratulating her. I think there's certainly some of that. Um, but yeah, so um,
And
what else do we got here? So
like I will also say quickly that having a baby is a fundamentally good thing.
mhm,
Regardless of how the child was conceived, the birth of a new child is a thing that ought to be celebrated. That
right,
doesn't
right.
mean that there also isn't room to discuss other considerations in the birth of the child, but fundamentally, a new child is a good thing.
Yeah, right, right. And that's where it gets a little bit tricky for those
Right.
Christian values. Like, how do you go about this? Obviously, like there is one good, like one good thing, but there's also some bad going on here. How do you
Mhm.
approach that specific issue um, without being like maybe like a massive pushover or just like completely bitter, um, unlikable individual on the internet? And that's
Mhm.
yeah. Um, so another kind of going a little bit deeper into this, is that I pulled a couple of old Ashley tweets. I hate doing this. I don't like doing this at all. I don't like pulling up old tweets, but like you have things where she says stuff like this. Pull this up quick. So this is a tweet. This is from, I believe, 2019. Yeah, 2019. So obviously it's quite a few years ago, and people can change their opinions in that time. But just kind of reading some of this stuff, bring back family values, make monogamy great again, like on the what's it called, the whiteboard over there.
Yes.
It's okay to be staying. And like the thing is like obviously these are very conservative talking points. Conservatives would generally agree with all of these things, but it's coming from someone that doesn't necessarily seem to, in her own life, follow these, at least as of late. Obviously, this is 2019. A lot can change in a few years as far as personal opinion goes. But anyway, so like that's another issue that people have brought up, is that she seems to be quite a bit of a hypocrite here. Obviously, hypocrisy is very, very dangerous. I strongly despise hypocrisy coming from the right in a lot of cases, even though I know that I'm guilty of it at times as well. Just because it does give really easy fuel for the opposition to showcase kind of those cracks and give sources for attack. On top of like, especially like even like if you look in the Bible, Jesus is consistently angry at religious hypocrisy, and I would say that conservative hypocrisy could, at least like going against those conservative values that you yourself are preaching, there's certainly a bit of a comparison there. And hypocrisy is obviously something that everyone struggles with at times, so that's where it gets a little bit challenging. But at the same time, it is something that people should try to avoid as much as possible, just because it can easily damage your reputation. It can easily damage your perspective of self, even at times. Yeah, there's a little rant on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think if you were to ask Ashley St. Clair now, she would still agree with her 2019 tweet about the importance of family values and monogamy. Like, I don't think what's going on here is a shift in what she believes. I think what's going on here is maybe not living out what she believes or making a mistake at some point in her life.
And of course, like I guess one kind of unknown, and I don't know if Elon has talked about this situation yet publicly. I haven't seen too much about that from Elon. Obviously, this was a couple days ago, so who knows? I didn't dig too deep into that, but like, and the thing is like, who really knows how present he'll be for this child? Obviously, he has multiple kids with multiple different women. I think that's going to be a challenge from the get-go, but we don't really know for certain how that's going to play. And so I do think that, generally speaking, obviously this is definitely not going to be a traditional family, and it's definitely not going to have the strongest parental connection for the child. So that's obviously going to be an issue for the upbringing, most likely.
Right. I think you could make an argument that in this situation, Elon is actually the biggest problem here.
I think you can definitely make that assumption. So the thing about Elon that's interesting is that he's very passionate about having kids. He's obviously quite a fanatic regarding population decline, which I mean, I do think that he's right about a lot of that. But I think his solution to combat that is not exactly the wisest, nor what should become the norm in order to fix that particular issue.
Yeah.
Which that kind of goes. Yeah, sure. I'll bring this up. We had after this. This isn't completely related, but it's somewhat related. This tweet here. So this is kind of showcasing that this idea of having kids, and a lot of them is very, very prevalent on the right. So obviously you have all of these big names in on the political right at the moment, and they all seem to have this idea like you should get married and have lots of kids, not just have kids, lots of kids. And I think that what Kaylee here says in these bottom two paragraphs, for the most part, I think shows that there is a bit of an issue with the messaging here, just in the reality that not necessarily everyone's going to be in a situation, especially financially, to be able to have a bunch of kids, or in some cases even be married, or really stuff like that. Like a lot of like there's a bit of a disconnect with the average person and obviously someone who's quite wealthy in this particular idea. And of course, I think there's a lot of people who could feel as if they've failed if they go against what these conservative voices have said, which is quite dangerous, I think.
I think the other problem with all this conservative advice listed here, and I think we may have talked about this before in a previous episode, is that it's kind of this one-size-fits-all approach that completely ignores the goodness of being single. Like, you do not actually have to get married and have kids. If you want to, then yes, absolutely, you should get married and have kids, but that's not the only thing you can do with your life.
Right, for sure. And obviously this goes more, I think this is even more prevalent, this sort of disconnect in the church as well. Just because of the commandment of be fruitful and multiply, which can be abused and overinterpreted. But obviously, I think we definitely have discussed this in the past where there's absolutely nothing wrong biblically with remaining single, whether that's for some time, you get married later in life, or for the rest of your life. There's really no problem with that.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, it is quite a disconnect that we do see here, and obviously, I guess Elon has such an interesting position in this particular debate, just because he definitely is not a Christian, and I would say he's not a conservative either. I mean, he's basically just a Democrat defector, if anything, or he got pushed out by the Democrats, and now he happens to just be on the right. But of course, he's not going to just magically change his values to align with your traditional conservative viewpoint. And obviously, this is something that I noticed during the election, or the last election, Trump's campaign, whatever. It felt like there was a lot of sacrifice regarding the biblical ethics that, at least in my opinion, are what outline conservatism, for the sake of gaining a few votes, gaining political power. And I think that stuff with Elon. Obviously, Elon has done some good for conservatives. There's no denying that. His movement towards free speech, although iffy at times, generally is a good thing. But the thing is that he's definitely, I think, brought a lot of values over that don't necessarily align, and I think that's going to be a little bit difficult for some conservatives that seem to practically worship him to all of a sudden realize that, wait a minute, something's a little bit off here. What are we doing? And that I do think that, I mean, this idea of religious conservatism is slowly dying out to the point where possibly in the next decade or so, Christians like myself would feel completely alienated from politics in general. And I feel like that there's already obviously some Christians that feel that way, and it's probably going to get worse.
Right.
All right.
This is just such a tricky issue because there's so many factors involved. There's so many different levels on which you can address the issue and people's responses to it. It's really complicated, and the answer is not simple, and it really shows the divisions that do exist in the right.
And it as much as I hate to say it, this could like completely implode the right faster than anticipated. And next thing you know, Trump's campaign is or Trump's term is a complete disaster, and it could just expedite what do you want to call it, radical progressivism. Because, like, I mean, Trump himself is barely qualifies as conservative, in my opinion, but he certainly seems to be somewhat of a force against the radical progressivism that you see
Right.
from from a lot of the Democrats. Which again, that's again where it kind of makes an issue. Is this like this person does not align with my values, but lesser? It's like the lesser of two evils argument that comes around every political season, and it's just a really crappy place to be within politics, to have to essentially just having to find just slivers of hope in a specific candidate that you know doesn't really align with you or want what you necessarily want, just for some hope that they will do better than the opposition. It's just not fun to go through that.
Yeah, it's not a great place to be in for anyone, really.
Yeah, it could end up being a massive mess. I really hope that I mean, I hope Trump's term goes well, because I would vastly prefer President Vance to President Trump,
Right.
From the get go. Just because I value I like his character a lot more than that of Trump. I think he's, first of all, a lot more respectable, a lot more respectful. He has a lot more, I guess, self-control maybe. And I mean, like, sometimes Trump's energy can be entertaining and sometimes fun to work with, but at the end of the day, that's not exactly what I would want the leader of, I guess, the greatest country on earth to necessarily be like.
Yeah, I
I
know
don't know.
what
I know
you
you're
mean.
sick, so that's.
I,
I'm trying to
I also
carry
feel
it up.
like Vance has alienated less people than Trump. Like, I don't think there's that many people out there who like
Mhm.
absolutely despise JD Vance with every
Right,
fiber
right,
of their being, whereas there
right,
absolutely are people who feel that way about Trump.
right.
And
I think that he would
understandably
have.
so in some cases.
I think he'd have a much stronger pull to like your DeSantis supporters last term, who,
Right.
or your never Trumper Republicans. Though I think they are quite small in number, relatively speaking. I think that could be gaining a few votes from that group back is something that Vance could easily do.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, yeah, yeah. Of course, DeSantis isn't like, I don't know who would go against Vance. I think it's pretty set in stone that he will be the nominee for the Republicans. I don't
Yeah, at
see
this
anyone
point,
else
probably
standing much of a
so.
chance. Who is VP? I know his VP pick is already in discussion. I've heard Tulsi Gabbard mentioned. Personally, I think that's way too risky, just because she is in a similar position to Elon, where she basically just left the left and then very, very quickly jumped on the Trump train. And I think that she's probably a little bit more reasonable than Elon's perspective on stuff, but it's hard
Yeah,
to say for certain.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah. All right. Is there anything else we want to talk about here? I guess, like,
Um,
I mean, us just discuss this. This is just basically just a completely different issue, but we have some
yeah,
time.
we got
Let's
some
do it.
time.
Let's do it. So obviously, this is something that some people on the left don't seem to quite understand, is that a lot of people on the right, they don't really care what side you're on if you are corrupt in the government. They want to see
Yeah,
all the corruption go. That's something that, I mean, more or less was part of Trump's campaign. We're going to stop wasting all this government money. We're going to find out, we're going to expose the corruption that we see. And obviously, that was regardless of whether it comes from the left or the right. And I think that this meme showcases kind of what the attitude is. Obviously, I think that probably the majority of our federal government officials need to go. They're too old.
Yeah.
They're too old, or they're too corrupt. They don't really care about the people that voted them in. There's too many incredibly wealthy bureaucrats in the government at the moment that need to go. But of course, how much of that will actually happen? How easy is that to do? You can't just like end a term of every politician that you don't like. It's a little bit more complex than that. And I mean, the unfortunate thing is that like nowadays it takes a lot of money in order to run a campaign, even for like a House seat. That a lot of the people that probably should be in Congress wouldn't be able to actually run a successful campaign just due to lack of funding. And of course, a lot of people that should be in the government also don't want to be. They're not necessarily about that. And that's where it gets really, really challenging, is that, oh shoot, we're stuck with a bunch of rich people who can run their campaigns that don't actually care about any of the issues. They just want to get elected. And of course, like at that point, like, is it really a true democracy where people pick their choice, or is it just picking for whichever rich guy is slightly less bad?
Yeah. Like I think maybe to some extent both parties, but I would say especially the Democratic Party has missed that the vast majority of average individuals don't want corrupt, old, rich bureaucrats in power. We want people who actually represent us, who haven't lived in Washington, D.C. since the dinosaurs roamed the earth, and who actually have like a generally, they have some awareness of what matters to the average individual, and they're going to stand up for what matters to that average individual in Congress. And the sense you get from most Congress people these days, it's that they just really don't care that much. And no one likes that. Republicans don't like that, and Democrats don't like that. And I think that if we're getting rid of the corruption, that's going to be a popular thing across the board.
Yeah, you'd feel like this is an issue that both sides could agree on, and I think that you've definitely seen some of that. Some people reaching across the aisle to support exposing the corruption going on in the government. But I mean, even then, there's still a lot of people, especially on the left, that seem just vehemently opposed to this for really no good reason. I mean, even like some of the Democrat leaders are weirdly protesting a lot of the stuff that Trump is doing, as if because they definitely don't have anything to hide, and that's why they're protesting it. And it's such like it's. I mean, the challenge is that the only way to like fix a lot of issues in the government is to get both parties on the same side. But that's just so difficult on a lot of issues. But I feel like this might be one of the better shots there is. But of course, another problem was just because this effort is being led by Trump, it's going to alienate a lot of people that would otherwise probably be for the cause.
True. And then even if you do get the corrupt people out of office, the problem is, what kind of people are we going to get back into office? They won't necessarily be any better.
Right. That's, I mean, like in theory, in the country, the people should be able to hold the government accountable. But I mean, especially because the people on the ballot are going to be rich, out of touch elites, oftentimes that's just going to be very, very difficult to do so, because like you can try to hold them accountable, they're not really going to care.
Exactly.
Unless like all of a sudden their money or something is threatened, then maybe they'll actually care about it. But for now, it just remains to be seen what will actually happen. I don't know. I hope some stuff gets done in the government. It's hard to say. Really, really hard to say what like how successful Trump and his team are going to be at fighting the corruption inside, because I feel like my fear is kind of like they only focus on the corruption of one side.
Mhm.
I think that would be a massive issue. Of course, it's gonna be a challenge. It's gonna be a challenge. I'm cautiously
Yeah,
optimistic
for
though.
sure. I too am cautiously optimistic, but we'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm. For sure, for sure. Anyways, I think that's all I've got. That's all I've got from Twitter. If
Yeah.
there's anything else that you want to discuss or bring up, you can. But
I feel like we've talked about a lot of things and not really come to any definite conclusion on any of them, but that's okay.
mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, it's mostly just this is just a place for us to discuss this stuff. So
Right.
I think that's fine. I've been working on some other content, sort of.
Nice.
Like I've been struggling to actually sit down and like hit record. Um, I think that just because of the lack of confidence I had, because like this content's got to be obviously pre-recorded, so it at least should be my information I have should be generally correct. So I think that
Mhm.
that's one thing. I don't necessarily want to just like openly spread lies through my content. I think I should be fine. I should be fine. I should be fine. But that is a concern. Um, on top of that is just like I don't like making thumbnails.
Yeah.
That's only to make it like a thumbnail just for the show that we can put over instead of just it being random frame of our faces.
Right.
Um,
Someday.
Someday, yeah. I'm hoping to get a couple stuff out this next week. We'll see if that happens or not. But anyways, that's all we got for today. So
Thanks for
thanks for
tuning in,
watching.
guys.
We'll see you in the next
Sorry I
one.
did not have as much to say, and anything I did say probably sounded vaguely incoherent, but thanks for tuning in nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll see you guys in the next one.